I was standing in front of the mirror in my bridal suite, 15 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, when I saw her reflection behind me. Patricia, my future mother-in-law, stood in the doorway, and something about her face made my stomach drop. She was pale, almost gray, and her hands were trembling at her sides. This was a woman I'd only ever seen perfectly composed, almost cold in her control. But now she looked like she was about to shatter. "Emma," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk. Right now." I turned around slowly, my veil rustling with the movement. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Then she locked it. The soft click of the lock felt louder than it should have. "Before you marry my son," she said, and I watched a tear slide down her carefully made-up face. "There's something you need to know. Something I should have told you months ago." For emotionally intense wedding stories that stay with you, subscribe and like to see new stories every day. Let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand how perfect everything seemed before that moment. My name is Emma, and I'm 29 years old. 3 years ago, I met David at a dinner party hosted by mutual friends. I almost didn't go that night. I'd had a long week at work and was tempted to stay home with takeout and Netflix. But my best friend, Rachel, convinced me to come out for just one drink. David was sitting across from me at dinner. He was handsome in an understated way, with kind eyes and an easy smile. We talked about traveling, about our families, about the books we were reading. He was a financial consultant, stable and responsible. He made me laugh without trying too hard. By the end of the night, he'd asked for my number, and I'd actually wanted to give it to him. Our relationship developed slowly, carefully. We dated for 6 months before he introduced me to his mother. Patricia was a widow. David's father had died of a heart attack when David was in college. She lived alone in a beautiful house in the suburbs, and she kept everything immaculate. When I met her, she was polite, even warm, but there was always a distance I couldn't quite bridge. She'd smile and ask about my job, my family, my interests, but her eyes never quite matched her smile. David explained that she'd never really recovered from losing his father, that she'd poured all her love and energy into raising him as a single mother. He was her only child, her entire world. I understood that. I even admired it. I told myself that once we were married, once she saw how much I loved her son, she'd eventually warm up to me. David proposed 2 years into our relationship during a weekend trip to a vineyard upstate. It was sunset, and we were walking through the rows of grapevines when he stopped, got down on one knee, and pulled out a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. I said yes before he even finished asking. I called my parents from the car on the way back, and my mother cried happy tears. When we told Patricia the next day, she hugged David for a long time and told me, "Welcome to the family." But even then, something in her eyes looked sad. We planned the wedding for 8 months later. I chose a venue I'd dreamed about since I was a teenager, a historic estate with gardens and a ballroom with chandeliers. My mother and I picked out flowers, tasted cakes, debated color schemes. David was involved but not controlling. He trusted my taste, showed up when I needed him, and seemed genuinely excited about marrying me. His only strong opinion was about the guest list. He wanted to keep it relatively small, just close friends and family. I thought that was sweet, intimate. Looking back now, I wonder what I missed. The wedding day arrived on a Saturday in June. The weather was perfect, sunny but not too hot, with a light breeze that made the garden ceremony feel like something out of a movie. I woke up early at the hotel with my bridesmaids, and we had champagne and pastries while the hair and makeup artists worked their magic. My dress hung on the closet door, a simple but elegant A-line gown with delicate lace sleeves. When I put it on, my sister started crying. "You look like a princess," she whispered. I felt like one too. My father arrived at noon to take photos before the ceremony. He hugged me carefully, trying not to wrinkle the dress, and told me he was proud of me. My mother fussed over my veil, making sure it sat perfectly. Everything felt right. Everything felt like it was supposed to feel. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 o'clock. At 2:30, my bridesmaids left to take their places. My maid of honor, Rachel, kissed my cheek and said, "This is it. Your happily ever after." I was alone in the bridal suite for maybe 10 minutes, just me and my reflection and the butterflies in my stomach. I practiced my vows silently, moving my lips without sound. I thought about David waiting for me at the altar, about the life we were about to start together, about the children we'd talked about having, the house we wanted to buy, the trips we'd planned to take. That's when Patricia walked in. I smiled at her reflection in the mirror. "Hi," I said. "I was hoping I'd see you before the ceremony. You look beautiful." She did. She was wearing a navy dress, her hair styled perfectly, her makeup flawless. But her face was wrong. Her expression was all wrong. She didn't smile back. She didn't say I looked beautiful. She just stood there, staring at me like she was looking at a car accident. "Patricia?" I turned around fully now, starting to feel the first whisper of real fear. "Is everything okay? Is David—" "David's fine," she said quickly. Then she stepped inside and locked the door. That's when my perfect day began to crack apart. I should have known something was wrong. But when you're in love, you ignore the signs you don't want to see. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My heart was pounding now, hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. "Patricia, you're scaring me." She stood with her back against the door, like she was blocking an escape route, or maybe like she needed something to hold her up. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I've been a coward." "Told me what?" The room suddenly felt too small, too warm. I could hear music starting outside, the string quartet warming up for the processional. 15 minutes. I had 15 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. Patricia's hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. I'd never seen her like this. In the 3 years I'd known her, she'd been the picture of composure, reserved, controlled, always perfectly put together. But now tears were streaming down her face, ruining her makeup, and she looked like she might collapse. "David is already married," she said. The words didn't make sense at first. They were just sounds, syllables in the wrong order. I stared at her, waiting for her to correct herself, to explain what she actually meant. But she just stood there, crying, watching me with something that looked like pity. "What?" I finally managed to say. "What are you talking about? He's not... That's impossible." "He got married 7 years ago," Patricia continued, her voice breaking. "When he was working in Canada, Vancouver. Her name is Claire. They never divorced, Emma. He's still legally married to her." I sat down on the velvet ottoman near the mirror. I didn't mean to sit. My legs just stopped working. "That's not possible," I repeated, but my voice sounded far away, like it was coming from someone else. "He would have told me. He didn't tell you because he's a liar." The bitterness in Patricia's voice was sharp enough to cut. "I raised a liar, and I didn't want to believe it, but it's true." "How long have you known?" I asked. The question came out of nowhere, but suddenly it was the only thing that mattered. Patricia closed her eyes. 3 months. Claire contacted me directly in March. She sent me copies of their marriage certificate, photos from their wedding. She's been trying to reach David for almost a year because she wants to finalize the divorce and move on with her life. But David has been ignoring her, blocking her calls, pretending she doesn't exist. 3 months. Patricia had known for 3 months. That meant she'd known during my bridal shower, during the rehearsal dinner last night, during every conversation we'd had about flowers and seating charts, and whether the salmon or the chicken was better for the main course. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. My voice was calm, eerily calm. I should have been screaming, crying, but instead I just felt numb. "I confronted David as soon as I found out," Patricia said. "He begged me not to say anything. He swore it was a mistake, that the marriage meant nothing, that it was practically over before it began. He told me Claire was being difficult about the paperwork, but that he'd handle it before the wedding. He promised me, Emma. He looked me in the eye and promised me he'd take care of it." "And you believed him?" "I wanted to believe him." She was sobbing now, her shoulders shaking. "He's my son. I wanted to believe that he'd made a mistake, but that he was fixing it. I didn't want to lose him. I didn't want to be the person who ruined his life." "So you were fine with him ruining mine instead?" Patricia flinched like I'd slapped her. No, I wasn't fine with it. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every time I saw you, I felt sick. But I kept telling myself that David would do the right thing, that he'd handle it, that I didn't need to get involved. "What changed?" I asked. "Why are you telling me now?" She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and held it out to me. 2 days ago, Claire sent me this. I took the phone. The screen showed a text conversation. The most recent message was from a number saved as Claire. It included a screenshot of an email exchange between Claire and a lawyer in Vancouver. The lawyer confirmed that no divorce papers had been filed, no petitions, no documents, nothing. David had done nothing. Below that was another message from Claire. "I'm sorry to keep bothering you, but he won't respond to me. I just want to move on with my life. Please, if you have any influence over him, can you make him understand this needs to be resolved? I'm not trying to cause problems. I just want this to be over." I scrolled up through the conversation. There were messages from March, from April, from May. Claire wasn't angry or vindictive. She was just tired. She sounded like someone who'd made a mistake years ago and wanted to close that chapter of her life, but couldn't because David refused to acknowledge she existed. "Keep scrolling," Patricia whispered. I scrolled further up. There were photos. David and Claire on a beach, his arm around her waist. David and Claire cutting a small wedding cake. David and Claire standing in front of a courthouse, both smiling, both young and hopeful. He looked so much younger in the photos, but it was definitely him. Same face, same smile. The smile I'd fallen in love with. Have you ever had a moment where everything you thought you knew turned out to be a lie? "The marriage certificate?" I asked. Patricia swiped to another photo. There it was. Official, legal, stamped and signed. David Matthew Harrison and Claire Elizabeth Morrison. Married in Vancouver, British Columbia, 7 years ago. Never dissolved. I handed the phone back to her. My hands were steadier than they should have been. "Why are you telling me now?" I asked again. "Why 15 minutes before the ceremony? Why not yesterday or last week or 3 months ago when you first found out?" Patricia wiped her face with her hands, smearing mascara across her cheeks. "Because last night at the rehearsal dinner, I watched you look at him like he was your whole world, And I realized I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand there and watch you marry him knowing what I know. I couldn't watch you make the same mistake I did. What mistake? Marrying a man who lies, she said quietly. My husband, David's father. He wasn't the man I thought he was either. I found out too late, and I spent 20 years living with that mistake. I couldn't let you do the same thing. Someone knocked on the door. Emma! It was Rachel's voice, bright and excited. 5 minutes. Are you ready? Patricia and I stared at each other in silence. I stood up. My dress rustled around me, beautiful and expensive and completely meaningless now. I need you to leave, I told Patricia. Through the side door. Don't say anything to anyone. Just go. She looked at me with confusion and something like hope. What are you going to do? I walked to the mirror and checked my makeup. Perfect. My veil sat perfectly on my head. My dress fit perfectly. Everything was perfect except the man waiting for me at the altar. I'm going to get married, I said. Patricia stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Emma, you can't. I said leave. My voice was steel. I didn't recognize it as my own. She hesitated for another moment, then unlocked the door and slipped out through the side exit that led to the garden. The door clicked shut behind her, and I was alone again. Just me and my reflection, and the truth that was sitting in my chest like a stone. I wasn't in denial. I wasn't confused. I knew exactly what I was doing. David needed to face what he'd done, and he needed to face it publicly. He'd lied to me for 3 years. He'd let me plan a wedding, send invitations, book a venue, choose flowers, write vows. He'd let my parents pay for half of this day. He'd let me fall asleep next to him every night believing I knew who he was. He'd looked me in the eye 1,000 times and never once told me the truth. So I was going to walk down that aisle, not because I wanted to marry him, but because he deserved to have his lies exposed in front of everyone he'd lied to. The knock came again. Emma? Rachel opened the door and peeked inside, her face lighting up when she saw me. Oh my God, you look incredible. Are you ready? Your dad is waiting. I turned to face her and smiled. It felt like someone else's smile on my face. I'm ready. She squeezed my hand, oblivious to the fact that my world had just imploded. This is it. Your big moment. We walked together to the ceremony entrance. The hallway was decorated with white ribbons and roses. Through the windows, I could see the guests seated in neat rows, all of them dressed in their best clothes, all of them smiling and chatting and checking their phones one last time before the ceremony started. My mother was in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. David's groomsmen stood at the altar in their matching suits, and there was David, looking nervous but happy, adjusting his tie and saying something to his best man that made them both laugh. My father appeared beside me, handsome in his tuxedo. He offered me his arm, and when I took it, he leaned down and whispered, "You okay, sweetheart? You look a little pale." "I'm fine," I said. "Just nervous." "That's normal," he said, patting my hand. "But there's nothing to be nervous about. That's a good man up there. He's going to take care of you." I wanted to laugh or scream. Instead, I just squeezed his arm. The music started, the processional, Pachelbel's canon in D, just like I'd planned. My bridesmaids began their walk down the aisle, one by one, moving in time with the music. Rachel went last, looking back at me one more time with an encouraging smile before she started down the white runner. Then it was my turn. The doors opened wider. Every head turned to look at me. 200 faces, all of them smiling, all of them witnessing what they thought was the happiest day of my life. I saw my college roommate wiping tears from her eyes. I saw David's colleagues from work nudging each other and nodding in approval. I saw my grandmother, who'd flown in from Florida and kept telling everyone she wasn't sure she'd live to see this day. And at the end of the aisle, I saw David. His eyes locked on mine, and his whole face transformed. He looked at me like I was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, like I was his salvation, like I was his future. My father and I started walking, slowly, one step at a time. The music swelled around us, and I could hear people sniffling, moved by the moment. Every step felt surreal, like I was watching myself from somewhere above, a character in someone else's story. "You doing okay?" My father whispered again, halfway down the aisle. "Yes," I whispered back. We reached the front. David stepped forward, his hand extended. My father placed my hand in David's, kissed my cheek, and went to sit beside my mother. David's hand was warm around mine. He was smiling so wide it must have hurt. He leaned in close and whispered, "You're so beautiful. I can't believe this is real." I said nothing. The officiant, a friend of David's family, smiled at the gathered guests and began, "Welcome, everyone, to this joyous celebration of love and commitment. We're gathered here today to witness the union of Emma and David, two people who have found in each other a partner, a best friend, and a love that will last a lifetime." I listened to the words: love, commitment, honesty, partnership, forever. They all sounded hollow now, like words in a language I used to speak but had forgotten. "Marriage is built on trust," the officiant continued, "on the promise to be truthful with each other, to support each other through all of life's challenges, and to face the future together as one." David squeezed my hand. I looked at him and saw that his eyes were wet. He was emotional. He was moved. He actually believed everything that was being said. He'd compartmentalized his lies so completely, so thoroughly, that he'd convinced himself he was a good man doing a good thing. "David," the officiant said, "please share your vows." David turned to face me fully, taking both of my hands in his. He took a deep breath. "Emma, 3 years ago, I met you, and my life changed. You made me want to be a better man. You made me believe in forever. You're my best friend, my partner, and my only love. I promise to be faithful to you, to be honest with you, to support your dreams, and to build a life with you that's full of laughter and adventure and love. You're everything to me. You're my future. And I can't wait to spend the rest of my life showing you how much you mean to me." Some of the guests were openly crying now. David's best man was grinning. My mother had her hand over her heart. David looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to recite the vows I'd spent weeks writing and memorizing. Instead, I took a breath and said, very calmly, "I can't marry you." The music was still playing softly in the background. For a moment, I don't think anyone processed what I'd said. David's smile faltered but didn't quite disappear, like he thought he'd misheard me. "Emma," he said quietly. "What?" "I can't marry you," I repeated, louder this time, "because you're already married." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the musicians stopped playing. 200 people stopped breathing all at once. David's face drained of all color. His hands tightened around mine. Not romantic now, but desperate, gripping. "Emma," he whispered urgently, his eyes wide with panic. "Emma, please. Not here. We can talk about this. Please, not here." I pulled my hands away from his. "You married a woman named Claire 7 years ago in Vancouver. You never divorced her. She's been trying to contact you for a year. And you've been ignoring her. Your mother told me 15 minutes ago." Gasps rippled through the crowd. People were turning to look at Patricia, who was sitting in the front row, her face buried in her hands. David's groomsmen were frozen, in place, their expressions ranging from shock to confusion to something that might have been recognition, like puzzle pieces were suddenly clicking into place for them. It's not what you think," David was stammering, reaching for me again. "Emma, I can explain. It's complicated. I was going to tell you." "When?" I asked. My voice was steady, almost conversational. "When were you going to tell me? Before or after I became your second wife?" More gasps. Whispers erupted throughout the venue. I could hear my mother's voice somewhere behind me, confused and rising in pitch. David's best man stepped forward like he wanted to intervene, but David waved him off. "I love you," David said, and his voice cracked. "Emma, I love you. That other marriage, it was a mistake. It was years ago. It didn't mean anything." "It means you lied to me," I said. "Every single day for 3 years. It means everything you just said in your vows was a lie." I turned away from him and faced the guests. 200 faces stared back at me, shocked and confused and uncomfortable. I saw my father starting to rise from his seat, his face red with anger. I saw Rachel covering her mouth with both hands. I saw David's colleagues exchanging glances. "I'm sorry you all came here today," I said, and my voice carried across the silent garden. "I know many of you traveled a long way, but there isn't going to be a wedding. David is already married, and he lied about it. I only found out 15 minutes ago. I'm sorry for wasting your time." "Emma, wait!" David grabbed my arm. Not hard, but firm enough that I had to turn back to look at him. His face was desperate now, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Please, don't do this. We can fix this. I'll fix everything. Just don't walk away. Please." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. "Let go of me." He did, immediately, like I'd burned him. I reached up and removed my veil, the one my mother and I had, chosen together, the one I'd thought I'd keep forever as a memento of the happiest day of my life. I handed it to Rachel, who took it with shaking hands. Then I turned and walked back down the aisle. The guests parted like water, creating a path for me. Some people looked at me with pity. Some looked scandalized. Some were already pulling out their phones. I kept my head up and my steps steady. Behind me, I could hear David calling my name, his voice breaking. I could hear the eruption of voices, my father shouting, my mother crying, guests demanding to know what was happening. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. What would you have done? Confronted him privately? Or made sure everyone knew the truth? I walked through the doors, back into the building, away from the ceremony that was supposed to change my life. I suppose it had changed my life, just not in the way anyone expected. I made it to the bridal suite before my legs gave out. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, still holding my dress up with both hands, still perfectly composed on the outside while everything inside me was screaming. The first person to reach the door was Rachel. She knocked softly. "Emma! Honey, it's me. Let me in." I unlocked the door and she slipped inside, closing it quickly behind her. The moment it was closed, she wrapped her arms around me. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, Emma. Is it true?" "Yes," I said. My voice sounded flat, emotionless. His mother showed me the marriage certificate. Photos. Everything. "That son of a..." Rachel pulled back, her face flushed with anger. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I can't believe... How could he do this to you?" "I need to get out of this dress," I said. It was the only thing I could focus on. The dress suddenly felt like a costume, like something from a play I was no longer performing in. "Help me get out of this dress." Rachel's hands shook as she worked on the tiny buttons running down my back. There were at least 40 of them, and each one felt like it took an eternity. While she worked, I could hear chaos unfolding outside. Raised voices. My father's voice, louder than the rest, demanding answers. My mother crying. And David shouting my name over and over, his voice getting closer to the door. "Emma! Emma, please, just talk to me. Let me explain." Rachel finished with the buttons, and I stepped out of the dress, leaving it in a pool of white fabric on the floor. I pulled on the jeans and sweater I'd brought to change into after the reception. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally starting to fade. There was a heavier knock on the door. "Emma, it's Dad. Open up." I unlocked the door again. My father came in, his face red and his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of my brother physically blocking David from getting closer. David was still in his tuxedo, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled. He looked destroyed. "We're leaving," my father said. "Right now. Is there anything you need from here?" I looked around the bridal suite, my makeup bag, my phone, my purse. Rachel was already gathering them. "That's everything," I said. "Good. Let's go." My mother was waiting in the hallway, her makeup ruined from crying, my aunt's arm around her shoulders. When she saw me, she rushed forward and pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "My baby," she kept saying. "My poor baby." "I'm okay, Mom," I said, even though I wasn't sure that was true. David tried one more time to get past my brother. "Emma, please, just give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain." My father turned on him, and I'd never seen my dad look so angry. "You stay away from my daughter. You hear me? You stay the hell away from her." "Sir, please, you don't understand." "I understand that you lied to her. I understand that you were going to let her commit bigamy. I understand that you're lucky I don't knock your teeth out right here in front of everyone." One of David's groomsmen, his cousin I think, stepped forward and pulled David back. "Come on, man. Let them go. Just let them go." We left through a side exit, avoiding the guests who were still gathered in confused clusters throughout the venue. I could hear snatches of conversation as we passed. "Did she say he's already married? I can't believe this. Poor girl. Do you think the reception is still happening?" The reception hall sat just beyond the garden, decorated exactly the way I'd planned. The tables were set with cream linens and gold-rimmed china. The centerpieces were perfect arrangements of roses and peonies. The DJ booth was set up in the corner. The cake, 3 tiers of champagne-flavored cake with buttercream frosting, sat on its own special table, topped with fresh flowers and a topper that said Emma and David in elegant script. None of it would be used. Tens of thousands of dollars, months of planning, all of it just sitting there, waiting for a celebration that would never happen. My parents drove me to their house, not to the apartment I shared with David. I couldn't go back there. Not yet. Maybe not ever. My mother made tea that no one drank. My father paced the living room, alternating between rage and disbelief. Rachel stayed with me, sitting beside me on the couch, holding my hand. My phone started buzzing. Text messages flooded in. Some from friends at the wedding asking if I was okay. Some from relatives who'd heard what happened and wanted to know if it was true. Some from people I barely knew, asking for details, hungry for gossip. And then there were David's messages. They started around 6 o'clock and didn't stop. "Emma, please. I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. I know I should have told you. It was a mistake. The marriage was a mistake. It meant nothing. Claire and I, we barely knew each other. It was impulsive. We were young. I thought I could handle it without dragging you into it. I was trying to protect you. Please just let me explain in person. I love you. I've never loved anyone the way I love you. Don't throw away 3 years because of something that happened before I even met you. This isn't fair. You're not even giving me a chance to make this right. The messages shifted from apologetic to angry by midnight. You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. You could have talked to me privately. You made a scene because you wanted to hurt me. My mother had no right to tell you. She betrayed me. I hope you're happy. You destroyed everything. I read every message, feeling nothing. Then I blocked his number. Over the next few days, the story spread. In a town the size of ours, something like this doesn't stay quiet. I became that bride, the one whose wedding imploded at the altar. Some people were sympathetic. Others seemed almost excited by the drama. I overheard whispers at the grocery store. I saw people taking pictures of me when they thought I wasn't looking, but I didn't hide. I didn't lock myself in my parents' house and refuse to come out. When people asked me directly what happened, I told them the truth. He was already married. I found out 15 minutes before the ceremony, so I called it off. Most people's reactions were the same: shock, then anger on my behalf, then a kind of horrified fascination. "What are you going to do?" they'd ask. "Move on," I'd say. Because what else was there to do? The full story emerged piece by piece over those first few weeks. David's friends started talking, filling in gaps I hadn't known existed. Apparently, David had met Claire during a 2-year work assignment in Vancouver. They'd gotten married quickly. Too quickly, his friends said. But they'd chalked it up to young love and the romance of living abroad. When David's assignment ended and he moved back to the States, Claire hadn't come with him. That should have been a sign, his friends admitted now. They'd separated almost immediately, but David never mentioned divorce. He just stopped talking about her altogether, and eventually everyone assumed it had been handled. But it hadn't. David had just pretended it didn't exist. I found out from Rachel, who heard it from David's best man, that David had been sending Claire money sporadically over the years. Not a lot. A few $100s here and there, whenever she got particularly persistent about wanting closure. Enough to keep her quiet, but not enough to actually resolve anything. He genuinely believed he could maintain both lives. His past with Claire that he'd never officially ended, and his future with me that he was building on top of those lies. Patricia sent me a text message 4 days after the wedding. Just one message. "I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner. You deserved better than my silence. I hope someday you can forgive me." I stared at that message for a long time before I responded. "Thank you for telling me at all. That took courage." She wrote back immediately. "Not enough courage, and far too late. But I couldn't watch you make the mistake I made, marrying a man who lies. My husband lied to me for years about things that mattered. I stayed because I thought I had to. You're stronger than I was." I never responded to that message. I didn't know what to say. My parents helped me move my things out of the apartment while David was at work. It took 3 trips. I packed my clothes, my books, my grandmother's quilt, the framed photos of my family. I left everything that was his or ours. The furniture we'd picked out together, the dishes we'd registered for, the painting we'd bought on a trip to New Orleans. I didn't want any of it. I didn't want any reminders of the life I'd thought we were building. The divorce proceedings between David and Claire were finalized 3 months later. I heard about it through the grapevine. Apparently, once the wedding disaster became public, David had finally hired a lawyer and handled the paperwork. Claire got what she wanted: closure and the ability to move on. I wondered if she knew she'd accidentally saved me from making the same mistake she had. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, I heard through mutual friends that David was dating someone new, a woman from his office. They'd apparently connected over his heartbreak. I wondered if he'd told her about Claire. I wondered if he'd told her about me. I wondered if he'd learned anything at all, or if he was just better at hiding his lies now. I didn't feel vindicated when I heard about his new relationship. I didn't feel heartbroken either. Mostly, I just felt relieved. Relieved that it wasn't me. Relieved that I'd found out when I did, before I'd legally tied myself to him, before we'd bought a house or had children or built a life that would have been even more complicated to untangle. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment in the bridal suite when Patricia told me the truth. I think about how different my life would be if she'd stayed silent. I'd be married to David right now. I might even be happy, in an ignorant kind of way. But I'd be living a lie, married to a liar, building a future on a foundation of deception. Patricia was right about one thing. She gave me a choice she never had. She told me the truth when it mattered, even though it was painful, even though it destroyed everything, even though it came later than it should have. And I walked away. That's the part I'm proud of. Not the public confrontation, not the drama, not becoming the subject of town gossip, but the walking away, the refusing to accept less than I deserved, the choosing truth over comfort. If you've ever had to choose between a comfortable lie and a painful truth, you know how much courage it takes to walk away. Subscribe for more real stories about the moments that change everything. A year has passed now. I still live with my parents, but I'm looking at apartments. I got a promotion at work. I started seeing a therapist who's helped me work through the betrayal and the trust issues and the anger. I've been on a few dates, nothing serious yet, but I'm open to the possibility. I'm healing, slowly, on my own terms. And every time I think about that day, standing at the altar in my wedding dress, I don't regret what I did. I regret that it had to happen at all. I regret that David put me in that position. But I don't regret choosing myself. Sometimes the worst betrayal comes with the kindest intention. Someone finally telling you what you need to hear, even when it destroys everything. Even when it comes 15 minutes too late to save the perfect day, but just in time to save your life.